Okay, so the year is 2010. Kara and I have been married for 4 years, and our son Kobe was 2. To say that our marriage was chaotic would be a gross understatement. It was chaos. It was quite volatile, actually. There was never any physical abuse in the home, but emotional and verbal abuse was plentiful from both sides. Actually, looking back on those first 4 years of our marriage, I can't see that we did much of anything right. I think we couldn't even get church right. When we went to church, which was rare, she would go to one church and I would go to another. Couldn't even agree on a church to attend. And I would always throw it in her face that I was supposed to be the spiritual leader of our household. And unfortunately for Kara and Kobe in that time, that pretty much meant I get to choose when and where we go to church. So when you couple the fact of just our relationship was just terrible, there was very few things that really worked with it. When you couple that with the fact of Kara's family never really embraced our marriage, they said that in fact they believed and leaned on Kara with the belief of that since I had been divorced before, that her being married to me was causing her to commit adultery, and that in God's eyes we weren't even married. So needless to say, about 4 years into this, it all come to a head and Kara filed for divorce. And this whole concept of having to get a divorce to make things right with God was foreign to me. In fact, I'd never heard that before. So I thought, there's no way that a pastor, preacher, minister, whatever you want to call them, could really endorse that belief, right, and preach that. I found out that I was wrong. We visited a church together. I got Kara to go meet with a minister in a local church. And I can remember like it was yesterday. I'm holding Kobe, 2 years old, fast asleep in my arms. And he told me his studies had led him to believe that Kara did in fact need to divorce me to get right with God. And that it just didn't sit well with me. It just felt so wrong. I remember asking the question, how could an ounce of glory come to God if I had another broken home and a fatherless son? Excuse me. And so a few days goes by. Wednesday night, I find myself right here at Park Avenue. I knew no one here that attended this church. I had no idea why I was here. I walk in on Wednesday night. I go to the men's class. Dr. Skelton was the only one that I knew, just the dentist that used to pull my teeth when I was a child. And it was either immediately following the class or one day later that week. I don't remember exactly. I got to meet and speak with Todd. And the details of the conversation were too long ago to remember them all, but I remember in conclusion, he just looked at me and said, I would not advise you divorce in this situation, which gave me a lot of hope. So now I'm gonna flip it to Kara's side a little bit, kind of what she was doing through this time. We were separated for 30 days and she lived with her mom and her dad. If you know my wife, she's a first grade teacher and she's a digger, she's a researcher. She was gonna get to the bottom of this divorce and remarriage thing. Can we do it? Can you not? So she's reading all kinds of clippings and articles and watching little movie series about it. And she told me that after weeks and weeks of this, she realized I'm not even reading my Bible, trying to figure this out. And she would admit, as neither one of us were Bible scholars, to say the least, we couldn't tell you where anything in Scripture was. She took her Bible out to Lake Texoma to the Denison Dam, right by the intake where they have the big circle drive with the big rocks around the edge. And ironically enough, she said she sat on a rock, one of the big rocks, and opened her Bible randomly to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, which if you don't know, it speaks about instruction for marriage. She said within an hour of praying and reading that God made it clear to her that she needed to come back home. So I obviously had no idea this was going on. It's day 27 of our 30-day separation, and I prayed the most frightening prayer I've ever prayed. I asked God to bring my family back, but I told him that if by doing so, it would cause me to turn my back on him like I'd always done in the past when I got what I wanted from him. I told him to keep him away, not to bring him back. See, I was broken. I tried to live this life my way, time and time again, and I failed miserably. I knew that I had to put God as the front of my house and my family, my life. Since that day, nothing's been the same. God has changed me, and by changing me, he's changed the path of my wife, my daughter, my son. 2 years after this, we had a daughter, Gracie, and we named her Gracie because it was simply by the grace of God that we were even still married to have her. Colossians 1:17 says he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And that's the only explanation I have for my marriage. So I would just want to encourage and advise people, if you find yourself in a bad spot in your marriage now, do not give up. Surrender yourself, give it to God, and I promise you He'll work miracles in your life just as He did ours. Thank you for letting me share.